a media station in the country. We specialize in video production, live coverage, advertising and social media marketing. We do quality production for YouTube videos, podcasts and live events. Transform your vision into reality with creativity and precision. Call us today and elevate your story on 0705 872 237.
Elevate TV, advancing kingdom lifestyle.
Welcome to the Morning Digest show. This is the show where we discuss leadership matters, and I am happy that you could join us from wherever you are watching us from. I want to encourage you to also invite your friends and your family. Share our social media handles to your page, and that is on YouTube and Facebook, Elevate TV, and encourage family and friends to be able to be part of this conversation. We want to continue in the same breath where we've been discussing matters concerning leadership that affect our leadership, equip, empower, help us to be effective leaders, and in particular kingdom leaders that God is calling us to be in our day and in our generation. And today, again, I am honored to have a very good friend of mine who is not new to this show, has been here before. We've had amazing conversations with him on different aspects of leadership. And today we're going to be talking about the virtue-based leadership. And I have my good friend, Reverend Joseph Obwanda, who is the director of Heshimika Initiative, with us today to take us through this conversation. And so, karibu, Rev.
Asante sana.
It's good to have you.
Thank you.
And happy New Year.
Yes,
on this show, it's your first time this year.
Yes. And
Yeah.
the last month of the year already. We are grateful to God and I'm honored to be here.
Karibu.
Asante
How has your year started off?
So far, so good by God's grace. And we can only expect it to be better by God's grace. Yes.
What are some of the good things you're looking to?
Well, this year, in many ways, I think 25 is a good number. And I think I see it as a year of grounding and expansion at once. So at personal level and at service level. But from the Heshimika Foundation, what we are doing is this year we want to kind of escalate the movement of inculcating the culture of excellence and secure our future. We say nurturing our culture is securing our future. And so that's what we want to do. We look forward to actualizing the A Million Excellencies Network. Amen. A Million Excellencies Network.
There is somebody who doesn't know what A Million Excellencies Network is.
Well, Heshimika Foundation, basically what we do is we train and coach people on how to be excellencies in their own right at personal, professional, and patriotic levels. And in that sense, we identify with the individuals who are pre-committed to the highest standards and ideals of their expressions. And we premise that on three things: virtues, values, and principles. And we'll be talking about virtues. So what we do is we run master courses. And this year we are going to be doing for professionals. So professional associations. And we're going to be doing for university students, leaders. So those two target areas. So if you're a professional or you're a university student leader, then this year we look at having you go through the master course. And once you become an excellency, then you get onboarded into the A Million Excellencies network. Yeah, that's our aspiration for this year. Because we need that in Kenya.
And I believe actually that's a much needed thing in this country. And so we want to encourage, I mean, my prayer is that God will continue to help you as you contribute to our nation through this program in helping, you know, change the narrative, change the culture in our nation.
Absolutely, very necessary.
Yeah. So today we want to get into this conversation on virtue-based leadership. And before we even go into that, I think it would be nice to, you know, look at those terms. We talk about value, we talk about virtue, we talk about principles. Can you again, I know you've done this before in the show, but I think it would be nice to try and, you know, explain the difference or the meanings of those terms, so that even as we get into the conversation of virtue-based leadership, you know, we are clear.
I think to keep it so simple, virtue is who you are. Values are what you do or not do. Principles are why you do what you do. So you have your
virtues is who you are, values is what you do, and principles are why you do.
Yeah. So for the most part, many organizations, even this country in Chapter 10 of our Constitution 2010, we have the Chapter 10 of the national values and principles. But how I wish we had national virtues. Because our virtues are our moral excellence. That's our moral compass. That's the insidious, your somebodiness, the you, the essence of who. That's your essence, the essence of your presence.
That's the foundation of what you do.
That's the foundation.
In actual, because value, what you do comes from who you are.
Absolutely. Because it's a question of spirit, flesh. So the spirit is your virtue. The flesh is the expressions of your values. So values, for example, we have values of professionalism, values of patriotism for the country. Companies and viewers could be part of companies or institutions that have, say,
core values. They talk
core
about.
values. But I'm yet to see, and this is what we want to encourage, why don't we focus on core virtues? Because virtues are, if we have the virtue of kindness, then the value of kindness makes sense and is sustainable. Right? So we have people who are doing things that they believe are our values or we value, all right? Externally speaking. But the software, or the software of that which, the hardware of what we see, ought to be interrogated, so that there is authenticity, there is identity quotient, where we are dealing with you, who you are, and that's more sustainable. So if a Christian, for example, if a Christian is showing kindness, that is supposed to be taken for granted. It's because their virtue is their kind, right? So you should not be clapped for your virtues. People may clap for your values, but for your virtues, it should be taken for granted.
You know, I think there is this saying, I mean, I think there's some time we talked about we are human beings, not human doings.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And so when we focus on the doing without being, then that complicates our ability to do or to sustain the value-driven approach.
Absolutely. The late Dr. James Margeria, a great inspiration and mentor to me, told us that hardware without software will get us nowhere. So we can have the hardware of infrastructure.
That's a nice quote for you to capture. Eh? Hardware without software.
Yes, I've alliterated it, but in the sense that's what you were saying. That you can have the best education. Kenya is one of the most literate countries in Africa. In fact, today if you say you've been to school, the minimum is expected of you is master's level. Because we are so educated, all right? And we can have the education, we can have the infrastructure, the superhighways and the expressways. We can have the county governments, the devolution systems and all that. So the infrastructure and the structures can be in place, the externals, what we call now our value systems, the things that we want to esteem highly and clap for.
Yes.
But if you have the hardware, the externals, but the people running those devolved government, running the church leadership, all those things, they speak in tongues 10 per second, all those things, quoting scriptures like a scripture quoting machine. Nothing wrong with that. But when the rubber meets the road, it is their virtues. It is their soft skills. So that we now have devolved, you see, we have devolved corruption, all right? 60% of our compatriots in this country, in 2023, the National and Ethics and Anti-Corruption Report indicates that 60% of Kenyans believe that you cannot succeed without being corrupt. Remember,
60%?
Yes.
Wow.
In fact, that's maybe we're just being conservative, and because that's a report by the Anti-Corruption Commission, all right? So, but you remember the report that the Aga Khan University did, that young people said that if given an opportunity to be corrupt, they would be, unhesitatingly.
These are the young people, and they are the guys we are looking at as our
absolutely.
hope.
And you say it's because the society has promoted, has not interrogated the virtues issue. When was the last time you had a school celebrating the kindest student in the school? All right? When did you last see somebody being celebrated for most empathetic person, the most honest person? But today, in our country, we frown upon, in fact, those things, people laugh at you when you say, I'm honest, or I'm truthful. And even that is very selectively. Okay.
I remember there was a story I saw some time back online about how somebody returned money. That nobody knew that I mean, he could have easily gotten away with. But then all manner of varied opinions about as to whether actually he should have returned. And a lot of people in reading the comments were like, if I am the one, maybe I wouldn't have done it.
And you see, because, brother, is that for the most part, when we talk about even that people are surprised that somebody is virtuous. It's something
it's an indictment.
It's an indictment on this country that we are 80% Christians. If there should be a country that's so virtuous, it should be Kenya. In fact, God should be manifesting his presence every day, because virtue is the essence of the presence of God in you. Right? The ultimate virtue is love, and God is love. And so I hold the view that just at this definitional stage, we need to define ourselves as the divine defines us by our virtues. It has eternal relevance. It is sustainable. You don't have to fake it to make it. Because who you are, that's who you are. Who you are is superior to what you do. As one poet said, people forget what you do, people forget what you say, but they never forget how you make them feel. And that's your virtue.
And unfortunately, we are, I think when you talk about that, I've just thought, a lot of times there is a lot of emphasis on what people see as opposed to who we really are. And so it's about the impression.
Absolutely. Because it's external. And you see, the externals are what we call values, right? Because that's what what I was saying is that professionalism, excellence is both a virtue and a value factor, but for the most part, it's the admirability, the attractability, the externals of it. Okay? So you see, even your companies or organizations that have core values, they talk about what they do. Indeed, excellence, professionalism, timeliness, the quality, those are what we do. But what will sustain that is the virtue. And I like giving this example. Somebody is is driving a big black car, you know, those high, big, fat cars. Eh? Then you're driving behind the person. So what happens that suddenly you see the window rolling, and then a bottle of yogurt is thrown out of the window. So what do you have? You have the hardware, but the person in that hardware has no
Virtue.
software of respect, of consideration, of empathy, of sincerity, of just that whole
Even love.
good decorum.
Yeah.
So that's the tragedy of our society today. And so we need a social reengineering. We need a moral rearmament so that the virtues that we celebrate and the virtues we talk about, and really we're talking about your personal agency. What do you bring? Your somebodyness.
Yes.
So what's the personal agency of Reverend Albert? That's what will remain long after your professional excellency is gone.
Wow. Virtues, I mean, you've talked about, and I think we need now to get into the aspect of leadership, but
Yes.
before we do that, I mean, it's amazing. You've said we focus so much on values, and the argument you're bringing is that, you know, values alone are not sustainable.
Yep.
And for you to be able to sustain a life of values, some of these very wonderful values we post on our walls, it has to be from a place of authenticity, and that is our virtues.
Yeah.
So you can share your thoughts about this, you know, about the virtue-based leadership. That's what we're talking about. And so share your insights. We don't claim to have the monopoly of knowledge, and so we want to encourage you to share your thoughts, your insights, and your comments. And if you have questions around this, I would be happy to look at them during this show as we continue to engage. So join the conversation as we continue with this conversation. So now, we are talking about leadership, and we are saying virtue-based leadership. What will be, what will that look like? What's the portrait of a virtue-based leadership? What does that mean?
I think fundamentally, leadership is a moral issue.
Yes.
Okay? Leadership is a moral issue.
Yes.
It is such that it is supposed that you are an influencer, or you are the bearer of greatest responsibility, or you are the person who makes the biggest sacrifices, so that certain things can move for the good of the people.
Yes.
All right? So to the extent that you are incapable or unwilling to do that, it becomes a moral issue. Right? So I hold the view then that when you're talking about virtue-based leadership, we are talking about a leadership that is defaulted with a strong sense of integrity, a strong sense of authenticity, a strong sense of credibility, so that the way you position what I called your personal agency,
Yes.
what do you bring, that is the capacity, or that is the thing that people plug into. So as it's been correctly said, that you can you can teach people what you know,
Yes.
but you produce who you are.
You are.
So if virtue is your somebodyness, if your virtue is who you really are
Yes.
as a leader, and in your leadership context, so leadership is the system,
Yes.
is the structures that we set,
Yes.
the context in which we are functioning. That's leadership.
Yes.
But that context needs a content. So the content of that context
Yes.
is the virtue that the leader bears. So that it's a culture, it creates a culture, it's the influence, the foremost influence
Yes.
that is manifested in a space called leadership. Call it responsibilities, call it tasks,
Yes.
call it assignments, call it your manifestos. All those, they are predicated on your somebodyness, your virtues, your personal agency, and all those that we have talked about as far as virtue is concerned. Yeah, and I like what the story is told about the great Alexander the Great.
Yes.
It is said Alexander the Great was renowned for being a great leader, not because of the valiance in defeating his enemies, but the valiance, the greatest fight he put forth to rescue his wounded soldiers. And that is a virtue leadership. And the Greeks were very big on virtue as a factor of leadership.
Yes.
And that courage is not in so much of what you do as much as who you are when demand is put upon you. Yeah.
I think you've already, kind of touched on the question I wanted to bring out, which we can still explore.
Yeah.
The distinction of, what a virtue-based leadership looks like in comparison to merely value-driven with a lack of virtue kind of leadership.
Yeah.
We can still explore that a little more, the distinction.
Yeah.
So that, when we talk about virtue-based leadership, what is the distinctive mark of that leadership as opposed to a merely value-driven leadership?
Right. So if I would put it different, in fact, in my view, a simpler way,
yes,
value is a management issue. Virtue is a leadership issue. So that when you talk about value-based leadership, we are actually talking management because it is those concepts or those conspiracies that we have given to ourselves, that these are the things we will celebrate. Because value is a societal conspiracy.
Yes.
So that if we say, in Kenya, what are things that we celebrate?
Yes.
What are the things we clap for? What are the things we admire and that wow us? Those are our values. But when you go to another civilization, those things change. If it was you having a big car is a mark of you are a rich person, then when you go to another civilization where having a bike makes you a responsible citizen because you are not polluting the environment and also you are also healthy. So you realize when you go in that civilization, you are actually anathema. You are not...
Because I'm actually told in Denmark,
yes,
even the prime minister rides a bike.
Yeah.
Most of them ride bikes.
Because their value system, they already dealt with those issues of transport long time ago. So here in Kenya, somebody's investment on the material and the, and the hardware issues is still our value drive. So I'm saying, because those are things that are already given. So when you go to an organization, you are not per se going to be creating the values. Because there's the value, the things that that organization
stands for.
That's your job description. What you're supposed to do. That is the values of that organization, what they value.
Yes.
However, your virtue is now your somebodyness. It is your, what's your value, what's your unique selling proposition, USP. Because that is now, so you see that virtue is actually smack on what leadership is. Then value is management.
So virtue is really the essence.
That's the essence of leadership. Yeah, because that's what I should say. Virtue is a culture, but value is the strategy. So as Tom Peters, is it Peter Drucker or Tom Peter, one of the two gurus, he says that strategy of culture consumes strategy for breakfast. To say that if the culture is strong, then the strategy will be subdued by it, right? And I want to therefore encourage that when you think of leadership, we are thinking about what is that culture? What is that thing that is the most dominant, that all the values will be subjected to it. So that, for example, Albert, you can be appointed to a very serious leadership position, okay? And you bring in your virtue, which is your culture.
Yeah, because they say leaders create culture.
Leaders create culture.
Yeah.
And bad value systems will destroy those leaders. So we have had people, for the most part, they were sober when they went into government, at least at this time.
Yeah.
But then they've become a prayer item suddenly. Why? Because you're wondering what happened to them. Because the value system that this leadership or the management and the administration of the day upholds either supports or otherwise. So until your virtue is very strong, you cannot change. And some of this is not even about the current regime. It's about Kenyan culture. What's our Kenyan...
I think I like what
Yeah.
I'm hearing
Yeah.
also about value system, which, correct me, I mean, or at least clarify with me. When you talk about a value system, I've heard you allude to what you celebrate.
Yeah.
It's not what is written on the wall.
Yes.
It's what you celebrate.
Absolutely.
That's what is
That's
actually
what at
a
the end
value
of the
system.
day. That's the value system.
Yeah.
It's what, when we say something of value, we are saying we have attached a certain worth to it. There's a price we have attached to it.
Yes.
So that it is something we can do anything to protect. And
Or
that's
to get,
and
or to
we
have.
yes, and we in fact it sounds like an oxymoron that we have bad values. You get it?
Yes.
Most part we think that values are positive.
good.
I mean, corruption is a value. Look at how it's celebrated. Because it is what the society has conspired to recognize.
Yes.
So we keep on electing the corrupt. And the people who are most sincere and virtuous, they are frowned upon.
Yeah, so we may say we don't want corruption,
Yeah.
but then our what we do
What's our capacity?
demonstrates that we actually celebrate corruption. Wow, that's quite a challenge, guys.
And sorry, I just want to add.
Yes.
You see, we have in this country an institution called the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. But 90% of the conversation is around corruption. Least do we talk about ethics. If we focused on ethics only,
Yes.
which is the moral excellence, that's virtue issues, then we'll talk less about corruption.
So the emphasis of these guys should be on ethics.
Absolutely.
Just trying to help people appreciate the importance of ethics. Wow. You know, good to have you watching, and just looking at the comments, we are having a good conversation here. So thank you so much, you know, Lewis Jumba for watching and being here, Wilbur Wanyonyi, and Lewis is saying the quote you've just given us, you know, hardware without software will take us nowhere. Then we have Wilbur agreeing with that, and then saying the society has not interrogated the virtue issue. Very few people are honest in Kenya. Thank you so much, Faith Shivega, for watching. And everybody else that is watching, we would be happy to look at your comments, your thoughts, tell us what you're hearing, learning, and give us even more insights. And if you have any questions, we would be happy to look at those questions even as we continue with this conversation right now, because the purpose of this is just to try and help you know, make this or mainstream the conversation about virtue-based leadership. And if we can succeed to make it a conversation that the citizenry and the people can be able to consider, I believe it will make a big difference in our nation. So we are going to take a short break, and then we'll be back. So stay tuned, share your thoughts during this break, share your thoughts, share your comments, share your feedback, and we'll be happy to look at them as we come back. That is 2 minutes break. See you in a moment.
Pastor James Mbugua and the Fellowship of Apostolic Restoration Ministries, FAM, invites you to to an apostolic convocation on the 30th of January to 1st of February 2025 at the Fountain Gate Church, Nairobi Sanctuary, situated at the junction of Murang'a and Ngara Road. The sessions will run from 3 p.m. to 8 p.m. on Thursday and Friday, and from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. on Saturday. Ministering will be your host, Pastor James and Dr. Lucy Nganga, among others. The theme will be Occupy Till I Come. Attendance is free and open to all. You are welcome.
Equip.
All these crises in the nation is because of breakdown of the family. Many people, when you hear the word prophet, the first thing that comes to your mind is false prophet.
A show that strives to teach and equip the body of Christ for the work of the ministry by giving foundational matters that are critical in the body of Christ.
If you met one terror man, bad man, does it mean all men are bad? Can women be apostles? Yes, because being an apostle or a pastor or an evangelist or a prophet is not a male position, it's a position in the spirit.
Welcome to an equipping moment every Monday and Wednesday from 10 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. on Elevate TV.
Welcome back. We are on Elevate TV this in the Morning Digest show as we discuss matters leadership, and today's topic is virtue-based leadership. We've had an amazing, wonderful conversation as we continue with this conversation, and you don't want to have your friends miss out on what's happening, and so that's why I would encourage you to go to your social, share the Elevate page on YouTube or Facebook on your social handles, so that you can invite your friends to be able to be part of this conversation on the question of virtue-based leadership. And I'm honored to have Reverend Joseph Obwanda, the founder and director of Heshimika Initiative, here with us, even as we engage in this particular conversation. And it's been an amazing first part of the show. As we continue on this part, as I encouraged you, share your thoughts, share your feedback, and we'll be happy to look at them during this show before we are done with the show, and just have an interaction with you on your thoughts concerning the subject matter we are discussing. And so, you did a very good job in expounding the distinction between the virtue-based leadership and the value-based leadership. And we stopped at the place where, the example you gave about like our anti-corruption body, we are focusing on corruption instead of focusing on ethics. And so maybe my question would be then, how do we, is it change or bring about, promote a virtue-based leadership? How do we help society to promote a virtue-based leadership?
Yeah, I think fundamentally, virtue has many factors, parameters. Fundamentally, it's about our socialization.
Yes.
What have we grown being nurtured in our nature? First, as a human being, it's taken for granted. As a human being, just being human,
yes,
you should be demonstrating certain virtues. In our mentorship program, the Heshimika Master Course, we train on virtues, personal excellency. We emphasize on virtues. And the first pillar of the 7 pillars of excellency is conscience. Excellency of conscience.
Yes.
That's the first pillar.
Yes.
And when you're talking about excellency of conscience, we are talking about the sense of the fear of God. Just being reawakened to the sense of right and wrong. That's where it begins.
Yes.
And a society that kind of diminishes the sense of right and wrong, and things become relative and tentative, it's already self-destroying. Because there are certain things that ought not to be even negotiable.
Yes.
For example, respect. It is something that from childhood is assumed you are nurtured well if you grow up as or if you demonstrate respect. But as we hear, that even fools grow old, all right? People who have bad vices, they say grow old with those vices. So they die hard. So number one, I believe it must be reawakening of the conscience, of bringing people to the sense of fear of God. We must default to that. 2 Peter 1:8, it says, be diligent to add to your faith virtue, knowledge, self-control, perseverance, godliness, brotherly kindness, and love. So there are seven qualities that are supposed to be added on your faith. Faith is your conduit, your relationship with God. So the moment you have faith, which is basically your password in relating with God, then once you open that door or that warehouse of relationship with God, then the first thing in that curriculum that ought to be added is virtue. All right? And virtue is moral excellence. So number one is the fear of God. We must talk to that. The first president of this republic, the late Mzee Jomo Kenyatta, said something very profound that I think is worth restating. He said the church is the conscience of society. And you see, Pastor Albert, I'll tell you the truth is that the church is competing with other organizations and institutions in promoting values, which is not our call. Our call and our unique privilege is to promote what? Virtues. Because that is something that we are activating the very nature of, I mean, we're speaking to the humanity. So I agree with that thought that the church is the conscience of the society. So if the church is not stigmatizing sin, if the church is not frowning upon sin, if the church is complicit in things that God would not be smiling about, then we are abdicating our foremost duty to God and society. So that's number one.
And that's why we are called the salt,
the salt
and the
of
light.
the earth. Yes, absolutely. Because we are the ones who bring the flavor, the palatability of life. Because virtues, we all want virtuous people. But why don't we work hard at that? Just like people want peace. Peace is a virtue.
So that means this saying that as the church goes, so does the nation.
It can never be so well stated. So I hold view, and not just because we're speaking to Christian audience, but because that is the truth. If you look at all society, civilized society, or call it societies that have developed in the positive way, they have had the fear of God very fundamental. Even the United States of America, their constitution was crafted with biblical principles. And that, I think, for the most part and for the while it lasted, kind of made America admirable. Because there are certain things you'll take for granted that when you go to the US, you don't need to know who is who in order for things to move. Systems work because those systems are augmented with virtuous people, all right? And I also think the second thing or way that we can do this is nurturing, what we may call mentorship, or if you may call it education, all right? The education space, you know, we have to start seeing the difference between education and school. Schools were formed by the capitalists for preparing people to be subservient or subordinates in the industry. You see, because the concept of management, as Henry Fayol, the father of management, and Frederick, I've forgotten the second name, these guys, the philosophy of work is that we create structures and we tell you to come and work within those structures based on our own value system. So when people are least responding to management, then schools were created in order to go and train people how to respond to management, prepare them for employment. So what we have is we have many unlearned, schooled people. Right? They've gone to school, but the only claim they have to ever being to school is that they were in school. So look at how a country that is so educated, so to speak, people who are professors, people who are so senior, they speak with vulgarity and disregard to things that that do not define our virtuousness as a society. So I think we need to interrogate, does our education system socialize or help interrogate and discuss? Do we have debates on virtues in our schools? Do we examine them? All right? So people cheat to get certificates for education. Can you imagine that? It doesn't even make sense.
That's how low it gets.
And so I think that's something we need to. And then I think finally, this may be a bit difficult, but nonetheless it must be put in place. There has to be legal framework. So we started right, I think, with the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. We have the UN, I think there's an agency of anti-corruption in the UN. But whereas we cannot legalize, or we cannot legislate, rather, we can't legislate virtues, but it gets us to a place where we start knowing what are the things that are normative as far as defining our virtues is concerned. So a society which has put in place right laws helps to sensitize people. So let's say the justice system ought to be not just retributive, it has to be restorative as well. But when you restore people, they come back with virtues. We don't punish you for doing bad things. We punish you for being bad. Okay.
There's a question here. I think that now now that we are talking in that direction about there's a question. How do you Lewis Jumba is asking, how do we cure a rotten value system as a society where we have too many leaders but no leadership? Do we change leadership, or do we first deal with our values and virtues?
Yeah, I mean, that's a fantastic question, Lewis. And as I've just mentioned, that when you're talking about a society, the social re-engineering, where there has to be a massive, large-scale conversation around something that we all value. Give you an example of Singapore. The father of Singapore, as we know it, is Lee Kuan Yew. In the early 1960s, I think 63, when he curated the culture and envisaged and spoke eloquently about what the Singaporeans ought to be like. It animated the people, and people saw themselves in a pictorial way what kind of people ought they to be. Because the leader cast the vision not just for the value system, but for the virtues.
And it was about what they ought to be, not
what they ought to be,
do.
not to do. Because they knew if they fixed that, and their education system was intentional in investing in well-formed people, so that formation plus information brings transformation.
You can say that
right?
again.
Formation plus information brings transformation. So he kind of communicated very effectively to the Singaporeans. And remember, Singapore is a very small island, all right? And they had just gotten their independence from, is it Malaysia? And see what Singapore has become. So they have achieved a lot of things, but they are also sustainably so. Because it was not just about what they were doing, it's who are they becoming, all right? I am part of an education community which our motto is, the university I'm currently studying in, our motto is, don't just be something, be someone. Because the orientation is about your somebodyness. So I think one, there has to be, in fact, I would just mention 4 things quickly. Number 1, there has to be conviction.
Okay.
Number 1,
we
conviction.
talk about conviction.
Okay. Number 2, there has to be commitment. Number 3, there has to be communication.
Yes.
And number 4, there has to be consistency in that, I would say, in that order.
So conviction.
Conviction. What are we convinced about?
Communication and consistency.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because if we put those 4 blocks in place, as in very practical terms, what are the things we are convinced about? So what we say in the darkness and what we say in the light. You know, the way we talk about character is who you are when
no one is watching.
Why should it be when no one is watching you? Even when someone is watching you.
Yeah.
If the you of the night and the you of the daytime can't recognize each other, there's a problem. Okay? So you see, in that in that analogy, 1, your convictions, that is your virtues.
Yes.
When Martin Luther confronted the monolithic Catholic system, and he was challenged to recant the things he had posted, the 96 Theses, and challenged the religious system of the day, because they were teaching things that were not wrong. I mean, they were not right, rather. And he stood before the papacy at Worms in Germany, and he said that my conscience is captive to the witness of the Holy Scriptures. I cannot and will not do otherwise. To act against one's conscience is neither safe nor sound. So help me God. In other words, he came to a place where I would want to. I would want even to agree with what you're doing. But there's nothing in me that can allow me to. When it's a conviction, when your virtue is that, wherever you are, that's who you are. It brings us, and then, as I said, the second thing is commitment. Is it something that you are willing to pay the price for? It has been said that the greatness of a person is determined by the cause for which they live and the price they are willing to pay for it. If you look at the formative years of our continent, the original Pan-Africanist leaders, they were people who had both conviction and they had commitment. They were willing to pay the price and they were willing to sacrifice a lot for the good of the people. But today, we don't have conviction. We don't have people who are committed. The third thing we said is communication. Are we able to say it with persuasion? Are we able to speak it with wisdom? Are we able to be considerate? What do we say? Our words, our nonverbal as well, they ought to communicate our virtues. Because sometimes you don't even have to say it. But people can tell.
Your communication is in your action, in your example.
Absolutely.
Besides your speech. Because there is more than speech.
Absolutely. And the thing is, as I think it's Martin Luther who said, the eloquence of our silence, the eloquence of our silence speaks much about our virtues.
Silence can be eloquent.
Oh, you can be so eloquent in your silence. And when we do not speak about the things that matter, then it also means we are complicit. So we must keep speaking about those things that are important and communicate. You see, you cannot not communicate. Whatever you do, you're communicating. All right? And the last thing I said, it has to be consistent. And consistent there is where now we have checks and balance. So that when, like the rail guards on the road, when you're cruising down the road, there are those metallic barriers on the depression. They are, suppose you're speeding and maybe overtaking there and somebody misbehaves and does road lane grabbing, as it's done here in Kenya. Then instead of veering off into the river, those rail guards can hold you back. And we need our laws, we need our families, we need the churches, the ministers to be the rail guards of our virtues. When people veer off, we constantly remind them. And I think those are the 4 quick things that comes to my mind, whereas Levi's question and
Wow.
our viewers is concerned practically.
Lots of wisdom here. You know, Pastor Joseph here is oozing wisdom in helping us to appreciate the virtue-based leadership. And thank you so much, Clara. You're saying your virtues will help you remain credible even in a place with bad culture. And then Lewis is saying, okay, that's a question. What have we nurtured in our nature? Okay. Then, of course, liking the quote you've talked about, unlearned, schooled people. Justice doesn't have to be retributive, but restorative, and formation plus information brings transformation, and impressed by that. Thank you so much for your feedback. Keep them coming. We are just about to wind up, so if you need to share something, it will be lovely. This is the moment for you to be able to share it, even as we bring this particular show to a close. And I hope that you're learning something. The challenge we are getting is these 4 things: conviction, commitment, communication, and consistency. You know, it's been said that the convictions of a man are never still.
Absolutely.
If you are truly convicted about something, then it will be there now, like it will be there 10, 20 years later. It will remain the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think to operationalize it, I would add one more insofar as leadership, because we're talking about leadership.
Yes.
Once you have those 4 in
Yeah.
place, now in leadership sense, there has to be connection. Right? Because connection is about empathy.
Yes.
It's about, you know, your givenness. You are bringing it to bear to others and situations. And I think for the most part, people who have no virtue in their leadership, they are not virtue-based in their leadership, they are disconnected from the people.
When you lack a virtue-based leadership, when that empathy, that kindness, that love is not there, those virtues are not there, you don't connect.
And you asked that question earlier also, that how do you know where there's a value-based leadership and a virtue-based leadership?
Yes.
That would be a very strong indicator, so that you can tell where the values is what is driving this leadership, is what checking the boxes, getting the offerings right. If it's in church, getting the offerings right. Are the ushers doing, so that you are looking at, when you see the congregation, you're seeing offerings. When you see the people who serve alongside you, you're just seeing what you can get from them, so that you do not empathize. And I think one great speaker, Simon Sinek, has spoken a lot about empathy in leadership. That the greatest role of a leader is not to manage I'll paraphrase, it's not to manage the values, but is to demonstrate his empathy, to bring his virtue on the people to bear.
Yes.
So that you manage, you care for the people. Don't care for what the people are caring about per se. So if you have managers, it's not about the customers.
No.
You care about your managers,
Yes.
and the managers will take care of the customers. Tom Peters, I think, he says in leadership that how the employer treats the employees will determine how the employees treat the customers. Okay? So if you are a leader, a primary leader,
Yes.
and the secondary leader, people who serve with you. For example, you have associate pastors.
Yes.
You're the senior pastor, the man of faith and power for the hour. All right? A senior pastor is, so affluent, living in a very high quality life. But the junior support pastor, so to speak, the youth pastor or the associate pastors, they are prayer items. I think that is already you can't even talk of yourself being a Christian, because the hallmark of a Christian is in the virtues, and the greatest of them is love. Look at David.
Yes.
And he led them with the integrity of his heart and the skillfulness of his hands.
hands.
That is a virtue-based leader for the best biblical analogy. David, look at how he cared for his people. Even when they sacrificed their lives to go and get him water, broke behind the enemy lines and brought him water to drink. He said, no, I will not drink this water because it's the blood. You guys, you can't sacrifice your lives for me and expect me to celebrate. He didn't take that water. That, very few can do that. In
Now
fact,
that's the virtue aspect. That's the heart.
and Maxwell says it very well. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And do we have that? Even in our national leadership, people are crying. You know, when people, 50% of your pay slip is deducted, so why don't you take what is remaining and give us what you're deducting? Because it's a question of people are crying.
Yeah.
You may be right in your values or what you're pursuing, but the virtue will speak to you stepping back and connecting.
Empathy,
If you can't connect, you can't correct. People will not give you audience if you are not giving them audience.
Yes, yes. If you can't connect, you can't correct.
Yeah.
And I think the aspect that we shouldn't miss out is that our ability to connect is in living out our virtues.
Absolutely.
Because that's what connects with people.
Absolutely.
It's not driving people to fulfill or to with the virtues, but it's to live out, the values, sorry. It's to live out our virtues, which is at the core of your heart.
Yeah.
Which you have spoken to as, integrity of heart.
Yes.
In reference to David.
And it's about the character, integrity of character. See, we have chapter 6 of our Constitution talks of leadership and integrity. I would challenge the drafters to reconsider, because character is the parent of integrity.
Yes.
So if we had leadership and character, we would have had integrity. But we don't even talk about integrity, because integrity is value.
Yes.
It's what we do.
Yes.
So how does Albert do his things? He
how
does
you
them
conduct
with
yourself.
Yes. In honesty, in compliance to the right ethos for that moment and for that discipline. That is integrity.
Yeah.
It's integrated.
Yes.
That is a value system.
Yes. Yes.
But when we're talking about
character,
how do you bring that integrity, it is character. Character is a virtue.
It's the foundation of integrity.
It's the foundation. So once you have leadership and character, then it's easier to speak about chapter 10, national values and principles.
So as we bring this, close to a close, there's that statement we talk about nowadays, in jest, character development.
Yeah, I know.
In jest. But then now, looking at it, maybe we may need to consider in our education system to inculcate character.
Absolutely. I wish the CBC was character-based curriculum.
Yeah, because if it is character-based, it would work better.
Competency will be a concept. Competence is a value thing, but character is a virtue thing.
Oh, yeah.
So you can be a competent thief.
Yes.
Because you have no character. In fact, societies with the most educated people have issues with corruption. I'm not going to mention the countries that are topping on corruption.
Yeah.
When people see their passports, the airport officials are edgy because they know this one, they can't be just honest. And it's terrible that a country can be so stigmatized.
Yeah.
When we see our leaders being voted or being shown to be the most corrupt in the country, in the world, what does that speak? Whether true or not, because those things may be questionable, but that perception itself is not good.
Yeah.
That if I was seeing on social media, somebody has enumerated the number of times some particular leaders have lied. The whole 2024, how many times have they lied? It's over 770 something times. You know what lies do? They corrupt the soul. They darken the soul. With every lie, with every misvirtue, the soul becomes dark. So you come to a place where your conscience is dead. Your conscience is seared. You can't even when you kill, there's nothing. You feel nothing.
You don't feel it. Wow,
Yeah.
wow. We are talking about virtue-based leadership. A lot of wisdom, a lot of insight, a lot of, counsel concerning this aspect of virtue-based leadership. And at the core of it is our character, who we are. At the core of it in a society like ours could be, in terms of propagating this, our education. At the core of it could be the four things that Rev Joseph has talked about, which is conviction, commitment, communication, and consistency.
And connection.
The ability to be able to empathize and connect with those that we lead. And so, I don't know what's the challenge for you. What can you immediately begin to embark on to become a virtue-based leader? I mean, I really appreciate the great conversation we've had. Always a joy to have you here. And I look forward to continuing with this conversation.
Absolutely. In fact, now that we are going to be launching the A Million Excellencies Network.
Yes.
Hashtag Kenya istahili heshima. So Heshimika, because Kenya istahili heshima. And we are particularly keen on professional associations. If you have professional associations, have the virtues, values, and principles of excellency inculcated in their members. Everywhere in this country, there are professionals, including religious leaders. So we'll work with the NCCK and the umbrella bodies, IRCK, and the AEE, all this, and all the professional associations, 27 professional associations in this country, as many as can on board, that we inculcate virtues, values, and principles of excellency. I think we'll have started some, say, transformation.
That would be great, and I look forward to seeing how that thing pans out in our nation.
Yes.
Thank you for being here.
Thank
you so much for watching. Thank you for your contribution and being part of the show. We really appreciate you for being with us and always being with us every other week. So we look forward to you joining us and being with you next week, same time, same place. God bless you and have a fruitful day.